When Federer takes his racket back on an overhead, the first thing he does is he turns his body while keeping his non-hitting hand on the throat of the racket. If you're being told to immediately point to the ball, then you're losing this ability to coil initially like the pros. From here, he does reach up, but if you notice where he's actually reaching back. His hand is actually pointing slightly back behind him, and he's looking over his front shoulder at the ball. He is not pointing at the ball with his non-hitting hand. From there, his non-hitting hand drops, and then he kind of brings it into his body. You'll see where his body is facing. His body is actually facing off to his right while he's hitting the ball in the court, and then he follows through. Now that was while moving backward. Here he is moving forward, and it's the exact same thing. He turns, and the first thing he does is he rotates his body, getting his body sideways with his non-hitting hand on the throat of the racket. You want to feel like you're turning your front shoulder to your opponent. At this point, if you want to say anything's pointing at the ball, you could say the tip of the racket is actually pointing at the ball, again, with the non-hitting hand on the throat of the racket. Then notice again where he's reaching. He's looking over his front shoulder at the ball with his non-hitting arm, his left arm, reaching straight up into the air. Do not point at the ball on your overhead. Turn the way the pros do. Then that non-hitting arm should drop. Now, what I'm actually going to recommend is that you pull this non-hitting arm into your body, and that way your arms actually draw an X in front of you when you're done. Now, before I show you what this looks like in front of the camera, I'll just let this video run so you can see it in action. Now, before I show you what this looks like and demonstrate it, it's important to know that if you're looking for local players in your area to compete against, practice with, or maybe even find a coach who's close to you in your area so you can work on your overhead with them, use my link in the description, playyourcourt.com/2minutetennis. And when you use my link, you get 50% off when you join. All right, so simple. You want to think of it as 4 things that your non-hitting hand is going to do on an overhead. And the first is it's going to help you set the racket. What you could even do is just not use your dominant hand when practicing the turn on the overhead and just take the racket back with your non-hitting hand. It's going to be on the throat. I like to tell my students to put the index finger touching the strings just to make sure that it's high enough. And when you turn, it should look like this. So you can actually practice that with just your non-hitting hand without the dominant hand on. You'll notice that the tip of the racket is pointing at the ball. Don't point at the ball with your non-hitting hand. It doesn't allow you to coil. It often makes players then face directly forward and then they bend down from the waist when hitting the shot. So I want you to turn initially with that non-hitting hand. The next thing is when you're ready to swing and you're going to knock off the birthday hat at this moment, you want to reach up. Don't reach forward, reach up. So if you're my opponent, right, and you and I are playing and you lob, I'm going to turn, getting under the ball. I'm then going to reach up. And when I reach up, I'm looking over my arm. I'm not pointing at the ball. I'm looking over. The idea that you got to point to the ball to track it, that means while I'm driving to a tennis lesson, I've got to point to the cars that are around me to make sure I don't hit them. You don't have to point at something to track it. You don't see in baseball them pointing at the ball to track it. You don't have to use this non-hitting hand for tracking. You want to do what the pros do. Turn with both hands, and then you're going to reach up. From here, then you're going to reach out towards your opponent, then you're going to bring it in against the body. And those are the 4 things. Turn with both hands, reach up, reach out, bring it in. And when you bring it in, you can actually cross your arms. One of my favorite things about Rafael Nadal's serve and overhead is that he finishes in what's called the power X, Vic Braden, where the arms are actually finishing crossed in front of you. That's a nice reactive break. It's a nice accelerant to make sure that you hit the ball with speed. So grab your racket right now. Feel what it's like to turn with both hands, strings facing down. Kind of feel like you're elbowing someone behind you. Jeff Salzenstein, elbow the enemy. Turn with both hands and get the elbow back. The tip of the racket can point at the ball. That's going to make it easy to knock off the birthday hat. Then reach up, knock off the birthday hat, point to your opponent, and then cross your arms when you're done. Don't point at the ball on your overhead, and there's no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. You got this.